Students, counselors, families, good morning or good afternoon, wherever it is in the world you are joining us. Thank you so much for joining StriveScan and Cachet's virtual college exploration STEM days. A few housekeeping items before we begin with today's webinar. First and foremost, you're encouraged to ask questions of your panelists throughout this session via the Q&A button that you see on your screen. When you submit a question, it will be sent to all of the panelists and they will work to answer the question during the session and at the conclusion of the session. They may not get to every question during this 45-minute panel, but they will receive a transcript of all the questions as well. If you have a question for a very specific institution, make sure to write that in your question. So rather than saying, how is your engineering program? Say, hey, Lawrence Tech, how is your engineering program? So be specific with your questions. As a reminder, your camera and your microphone are turned off. The panelists cannot see or hear you. So if you do have questions, make sure to type them in through the Q&A. This is one of 50 panel presentations and individual information sessions that we are offering through this Cachet program through tomorrow evening. You can hear from 2 of these institutions later. To hear just about their institutions, the recording for Lawrence Tech and Mass Maritime are already up on the website. So if you missed them yesterday, you can check out that recording at any point. When you signed up for this session, you received a barcode. You do not need that barcode for this virtual event. And like I said, all of these sessions are being recorded. They are at strivescan.com/virtual/STEM, the same place you went to register today. So if you missed Lawrence Tech or Mass Maritime session, you can go there and hear all about them at that space. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to our panelists.
Thank you. All right. So hi, everybody. We just wanted to thank everyone for joining us today for the Connecting with Colleges in a COVID World panel. We'll just go ahead really quickly and start off with some quick introductions and then head over to a little bit of an overview of the panel. So I will kick it off. My name is Erin Berklow. I am a senior admissions counselor at Lawrence Technological University in Southfield, Michigan.
My name is Will. I'm from the Illinois Institute of Technology. We are located in Chicago, and I am one of the West Coast counselors for the institution.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ashley Willis, and I'm an Associate Director of Admission at Massachusetts Maritime Academy, which is in southeastern Massachusetts.
Hello, everyone. My name is Randy Joes. I'm an Assistant Director on the Board of Admissions at Boston University, of course located in beautiful Boston, Massachusetts.
Perfect. Okay, so we again just wanted to start off the day with a quick overview of how the panel is going to run. So as you can see, we're going to kick things off with some ideas on connecting with colleges. We'll move over into best practices and tips for video chats, how our institutions are reacting to COVID, the application process in a post-COVID world, and then we'll give you just a really quick brief rundown of our institution so that you have some background. And then we'll open it up to a Q&A. So like Zach said earlier, make sure that you're using that Q&A function and we'll get to as many questions as we can. So we can go ahead and pop over. Perfect. So we wanted to start off today with discussing some of the ways that you can connect with colleges. And with that, I really do want to point out and stress that every school might look a little bit different. So it's going to be so important to reach out and be in communication with schools that you're interested in, that you're looking at. We in admissions positions know that these times bring a lot of uncertainty and can be very confusing, overwhelming, but still exciting. So we're here to help make this process really as easy and as seamless as possible. So reach out, visit websites, do everything you can, because we really are here to help you during these times. So to start off, it just makes sense to speak about collaborative panels first when discussing ways to connect with colleges, since all of you have already taken the first step in connecting by being with us today. There are a number of panels, like Zach said, throughout the rest of StriveScan STEM Week. So make sure that you check out the other options and really take advantage of these opportunities. Collaborative panels of any kind that are made up of representatives from multiple different institutions like this one are a really awesome way to learn about many different schools in one sitting. And then you're also, of course, gaining information on the topic of discussion. The internet is really a goldmine of information. So in doing just some simple online research, you can find multiple different virtual panel opportunities specifically for college-bound students. Next, I wanted to focus on virtual events. So with the uncertainty surrounding how the coming months are going to look, we are going to see more and more virtual events being scheduled for the upcoming academic year to replace some of those larger in-person events. So events like college fairs and college representative visits that you may have seen at your high school are really easily able to be moved to a virtual platform, which is definitely a huge advantage for you as a student, along with us and the schools that you guys are looking to connect with. There are many different platforms, setups, and different agendas that are going to dictate what each specific virtual college fair or representative visit might look like, but it's going to be so beneficial to take advantage of these virtual opportunities to gather information that you need to make an informed college decision. I also just really like to reiterate that everything's going to be a little bit different depending on institution. We're going to talk a little bit later, like I mentioned in the overview, about ways that our specific institutions are reacting to COVID, but a great way to connect with a school that you're interested in is just to reach out directly. Ask an admissions representative what kind of events, information sessions, tour options they currently have available for students that are just starting out their college application process and the research journey. Some schools might be able to have you on campus. Others might direct you to a virtual tour if they're not able to do a campus visit quite yet. Some schools may be able to meet with you distanced but in person, while others may schedule a virtual information session for you to attend. So really, regardless of the options that each different institution has, it's going to be so helpful to reach out to specific schools that you're interested in and see what choices that you have to connect that really might best suit you. Many institutions are even moving their larger on-campus events to a virtual platform for the upcoming academic year. So really keeping an eye on the upcoming events section of any website is going to be extremely helpful. And you may even have the opportunity to explore college options that you may not have been able to before, just with traveling and things like that. So this could be a really great opportunity to take advantage of some new institutions. And then to further stress personal contact, reaching out to a school to connect can be as easy as calling an admissions direct line, or chatting over the phone, or sending an email to create that point of contact. I know that some institutions may have the option for scheduling appointment slots, so you can either chat over the phone or connect over video with an admissions representative. But creating a relationship and connecting with an admissions counselor or representative at this time is going to be so helpful as you progress throughout your college search.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. That was a great segue into my part of the presentation here. So I wanted to just give you some tips about how to kind of create the best situation for yourself, how to make sure that you're prepared for all of these virtual events. I know we've been a few months into this, so a lot of us might feel like pros, and then we get a new platform and we absolutely have no idea what we're doing. So that's one of my biggest tips is, if you can, see what platform the institution is using ahead of time. If it's Zoom, great. A lot of us feel like we know that system pretty well, but there are others out there, and you don't want to get on there and then not be able to find the chat, not be able to turn your camera on or turn your audio off if your dog starts barking in the background. You want to make sure that you're well prepared. Same thing goes with the actual device. If this is your first time using something, it might require some setup. So if you're logging on, right at 5 o'clock for your interview with an admissions team, maybe not the best idea to do that with a new system at 5 o'clock. You want to try and make sure that everything's in place ahead of time. Even if it's something you use, they might have updated the app on your device, and then you might have to redo everything. So try to give yourself enough time that you can take a look, get those permissions all squared away, and make sure that you're going to have the best experience possible. Another big thing to consider is what the limitations of the individual application might be. A lot of these have, different sort of interfaces. So if you go through the web, you might be able to do that. It's quick, it's easy, but you might not have all the features. So you want to make sure that you're using the best possible platform for you to get everything out of this experience. This is your college visit experience. This is your college search process this year. And so you want to make sure that you're taking advantage of that, that you are able to, have that interaction with the counselor that you are looking for, versus that you're just kind of struggling through and trying to do the best possible you can. You want to think about this as putting as much time as you would planning a trip to a campus. Another really important thing to think about is, what is the event? So for this event, it's a webinar style. We can't see you, we can't hear you, and obviously that works because there's almost 200 of you in the room. It would get really overwhelming if we could hear and see every single one of you. But if it's an institutional event, it might be something where they're encouraging you to chat, with your camera on, or talk with other students in the room. And if that's the case, we want you to do that because we want you to help you explore the institution. We want you to see who else is considering, Illinois Tech, for instance. Do I want to spend the next 4 years with these students? And right now, that does mean meeting folks in a virtual way. So that's something you want to consider. Same thing as if it's maybe they labeled on their website as a chat. In that situation, we definitely want to interact with you. Events, it could be a little different. We might, just be trying to give a presentation, but if something's labeled as a chat, it's a really good indication that we want to see you. We want to hear you. This is your time with us where you can really kind of connect, show us who you are, allow us to learn about you, but also most importantly, allow you to learn about us. It's not one-way communication. This is all about helping you find a college that's a good fit for you. So, taking advantage of these types of platforms and videos is really helpful. Few tips on videos and audio. No one is expecting you to have that camera on the left there. We don't expect you to have some crazy setup. I have quite a little rigged setup this morning with like 2 lamps and things, just because it is early. I want to make sure I'm well lit for you. So think about some of those things, but don't necessarily go crazy. You're not running a CNN affiliate or anything like that. One thing to know about audio and video, though, is I do want you to consider the content and the device that you're using. If you're attending a presentation that has a webinar that has a panel or has a presentation, you may want to see what's on the screen. So using a small cell phone while you a lot of times consume video on that probably maybe is not the best thing for these types of visits. If you can, and if you have access to a slightly larger device, that's going to give you a better experience because you can see the screen, you could potentially still see the people who are presenting, but most importantly, you can see that information that they're trying to share with you on the screen. If you're on a tiny little phone, it can be kind of hard to absorb all of that while also listening, and you're also limited because you might not be able to do all of the chat and response functions if you're on a device like that, or at least just not as easily if you're using something a little bit bigger and you've got more screen space. Another thing, the device audio or using a microphone. I personally use a microphone just because I have a partner who works from home as well. And if I leave the audio, just room audio, you're probably going to hear a phone call happening in the other room. So thinking about the situation that you're in, the surrounding that you have, try to give yourself the best possible experience and try to give the school the best possible experience with you. Again, we know that this is not an ideal situation, so we're not expecting perfect audio, but you want to try and put your best foot forward, and that's really important in considering. Last things, just ways to make sure that you're getting the most out of this event. The most important thing I can say is engage with us. They do feel, and a lot of times they feel one way, but they don't have to. Using the question and answer session on an event like this, using the chat feature, just engage with us in these types of virtual formats. It makes it more enjoyable for you because it's personalized. You're getting the contact, you're getting the information that you need. It also makes it more enjoyable for us. I can tell you, and I'm sure everyone on this panel would agree, when you're just talking and you don't hear any type of feedback, it's kind of hard. So if you are in a session where you can have your video on, give us a head nod every now and again if something sounds great or you agree with us. That feedback is very helpful. The other one is limiting distractions. And I say if possible because no one knows exactly what's going to happen. If you're in your home and you can, go into a room, separate, close the door, that's great. If you're having Wi-Fi issues and you have to go, work in a coffee shop, or you have to find, Wi-Fi in a parking lot, if it's a really important meeting, do that. Do whatever you need to have access, and try to limit yourself in terms of the distractions around you. I know personally my cat will sit and just stare at me, so I have to ask her to leave the room on some of the sessions when I know I'm going to be very focused. Some things you're just listening to and it's fine. You can have your pet hanging out with you, but you may not want that if it's more of like a formal interview that you're participating in. And lastly, let us know if you're having issues. again, we can't see your screen. We can't see the experience you're having. Sometimes the audio is just not great. Sometimes our video might be messed up. You might be seeing multiple screens. You don't really need to see all that information. Let us know. If we're in person and we're talking with you, we can quickly tell if you're confused or if something doesn't make sense, but it's a little bit harder to do that virtually. So give us that feedback. Let us know. We want you to have the best possible experience in your college search. And a big part of that is just keeping us updated, letting us know if you're having issues. None of this is all perfect. So next up, each of our institutions are going to talk a little about how we're reacting to COVID, just give you some information about some of the changes that you might see at our institution or things that really stand out for us. And we're going to start with Ashley.
So definitely in regards to some of the things that we have already talked about, Mass Maritime has moved a lot of our admissions events into a virtual space for students to be connecting with us. But other ways on campus that we've reacted to COVID, we actually have an emergency management program. So we have a lot of alumni actively working in the field, in hospitals, as emergency managers. So this is a sort of big time for our alumni in terms of sort of highlighting some of the ways that they're personally reacting. Some other things that we've done on campus, we have a lot of students in programs who absolutely have to have some hands-on work due to larger licensing requirements. So we've done a lot of work to create schedules that allow some of the students to come back to campus in small groups to ensure that especially our seniors are getting that hands-on work they need to have graduated. And going into this next year, that's going to be a big part of what we're doing as well. So our faculty and staff are doing a lot to ensure that people are getting the requirements that they need, even though we're working in these sort of unprecedented circumstances. Something interesting that's sort of unique to Mass Maritime as well is if you're not familiar with us already, we actually have a training ship on campus. You can see it in my virtual background. It's a large 540-foot training ship that we send about 700 people out for 6 weeks every year. And that is a contained space where sickness travels really fast. So the ship actually already had a lot of protocols in place to ensure this, to end the spread of disease on the ship. So things like mandatory hand sanitizer use on the way into the mess deck, or that's like our biggest one. But there's a lot of protocols on the ship to make sure that health and safety is there. And so we've actually been able to adapt some of those protocols to our on-campus space as well, and sort of treat our whole campus as that condensed environment. So those are a couple of things we have been doing, and I will pass it back over to Erin to talk about Lawrence.
Thank you. So yeah, we, of course, at Lawrence Tech, and I'm sure all institutions, our top priority is really during this time, the safety of our students, faculty, and staff. So we've adapted and we've made a ton of changes to accommodate for the current time, while really also just trying to stay true to who we are as a university. So one of the biggest things at Lawrence Tech, we've always been really known for a one-on-one individualized focus. So at the start of COVID, when it was in its early stages, one of our larger challenges that we encountered was deciding how to run our orientation and registration, which is one of our largest events in June. We have all of our incoming students come to campus where they're advised, they get registered, they get acclimated. So we really had to adapt. So since we were not able to host that June orientation program, students were able to choose a one-on-one appointment date and time for virtual advising, registration during via Zoom with an academic advisor. So they really stepped up to the plate and made that work. And then they got to attend virtual orientation Zoom meetings. So they got all the information that they would have gotten in June, but it was a little bit more one-on-one and individualized. So they got even a little bit more, which was nice. Like I said, we're really focused on that one-on-one attention. So one of the biggest things that we wanted to make sure that we did was allow our students to really fully exemplify every aspect of our campus motto of theory and practice. So getting hands-on education is so important, especially in STEM fields, but also in all of our curriculum. So students are still now able to gain practice and experience in our state-of-the-art labs and studios on campus for the fall semester while maintaining social distancing practices and then following, of course, all guidelines and protocol. We know things are constantly changing and being updated on a pretty daily basis. So we've really made it our mission to keep our students up to date with information as it comes. So we're providing multiple points of contact, whether it's through emails, phone calls, text messages, our social media platforms. Make sure you follow those platforms just to keep information as up to date as possible. And then the last thing is one of our most recent updates at Lawrence Tech is a daily health screening app. So all students, faculty, and staff on campus for the fall will utilize the app as we return, just to ensure safety. So the app asks a series of screening questions that everyone answers and just make sure that we're good to go. So that's just a couple of ways that we're adapting, and I will pass it over to Will.
I wish our institution had that app. That's really helpful.
I'll send it to you.
Yeah, exactly. So Illinois Tech, one of the things that really stood out for me is, and obviously this is true of all of our institutions, I would say, is our students really crave that hands-on learning environment. And one of our professors in the fall or in the spring semester really quickly adapted. He was working with students in electrical and computer engineering, and he actually bundled a Raspberry Pi up and sent it to every student for the remainder of the semester so that they could still work in that sort of hands-on environment from home. So that's one of the ways that our labs are adapting. We've also, being an architecture-focused institution, we've tried to adapt some of our studio courses online. So that's kind of a big experience and a big change that we've done. We are welcoming students to campus this fall, but we do realize not everyone is going to be able to come. So we are making sure that we have that online experience as well. One of the other things at our institution that was a really big change and in some ways is actually really inspiring is our students actually started their own group on campus. They wanted to make sure that student voice was really well represented when it came to the COVID response. So a student organization called the Student Health Initiatives Group was formed to help make sure that, you know, not only that they're informed, but they're getting the questions they want answered. The questions that, you know, an 18, 19, 20-year-old might be very different from something a provost or a professor might have who's a little bit older. So that's something that was pretty cool and representative, I would say, of our student body. And then the other big thing, with us being an urban institution, the spread of disease is obviously a pretty big impact, and with us being a part of the city of Chicago as well. So we're doing testing throughout the full semester, and luckily we have an alumni who provided a pretty substantial gift to help us support that. So that's kind of some of the changes. Obviously there's a lot, but we could each talk for 45 minutes just about some of the changes on our campus, I'm sure. But next up, we want to hear from Randy in Boston University. Apologize that information is not on the screen that you're seeing, but we do want to hear about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I feel like each of our institutions have a bit of pieces of what BU is doing. So I'll try to keep this brief. So initially for this coming fall, we've adopted a hybrid learning model for students who want to come to campus, but also want to stay home. So we call it LFA, Learn From Anywhere. So this past summer, our facility staff and our IT department was able to go to each classroom, lab space, and so on to equip it with technology to make sure that students are able to do their classes both in person as well as virtually if they wanted to stay where they are. Our campus is roughly 16,000 undergraduate students deep, and so we did want to provide opportunities for students to have a choice in terms of how they want to come back to campus. So we will be opening this coming fall, and students will be back in about 2 weeks. Secondly, for the admission office specifically, again, as mentioned, as my colleagues were mentioning, that most, if not all, of our programming now is going to be virtual programming for the fall, including our fall visit days, which is our version of an open house, and as well as for as admission staff and folks who may travel, quote unquote, in the fall, we are not traveling. So we are doing all virtual high school visits for students who are interested in learning about BU at the high school level specifically. We, like Lawrence, are actually instituting a health screening app / online platform where students, staff, and faculty will have access to. And we've actually just been notified by the university that every single member of the community is broken down into different categories of quote unquote risk. And so the higher the category, the more often that we're going to have students and faculty and staff be tested on campus. I believe there's 3 or 4 testing sites that will have like pop-up stations every hour on the hour for students and faculty and whatnot to have their testing done on campus right away. And then finally, all of this information is actually all on one website that we have called Back to BU. And so that has all levels of undergraduate, graduate, research opportunities, internships. Every single piece of our community is located on that website. Again, Back to BU with the number 2. And you can learn all the updates that we have going on for this fall in terms of how we're reopening and how that's going to impact pretty much every space of the community for folks who want to be on campus. So just a little bit more about us. We'll talk about more later. Thanks.
Okay, so we also wanted to talk a little bit about applying to colleges in this time. Obviously, the application process tends to be a pretty stressful experience for students already, and the changes that are coming with COVID have just sort of added to those stressors. So just a couple things to keep in mind as you're working on your applications. One thing that I actually forgot to include in a bullet point here, but I wanted to share, make sure you're checking with your institutions on their requirements. Lots of institutions have some changing requirements due to this year, the most obvious being moves to a test optional policy. Mass Maritime has made that change. I think some of the others in this group have also made that change. So even if you have previously understood an institution's requirements, be sure that you're following up. And even if you don't see it on the website, follow up directly, because sometimes an update is made and the update just didn't make it to the website on time. So if you have a question, definitely reach out. On your actual application, be honest about what your experience is. We want to hear from you. The Common App will actually have a section this year for you to share sort of your COVID story. Don't be afraid to use that, whether you feel like you've had been strongly impacted and your family has been strongly impacted, or you just want to share your general experience with how COVID has impacted your just the way you feel about it, or the way it's caused you some anxiety, or kind of whatever that experience is, we are going to want to hear about it. So don't be afraid to use that space. There doesn't need to be a threshold for like the level of impact that you've experienced. We want to understand where you're coming from, so don't be afraid to include that story. Even if you're applying to institutions not using the Common App, many are going to be happy to take additional supplemental items. So even if you're using an institutional application and there's not a specific section for you to share information about your COVID experience, but you've already written something up or you want to share that information, just reach out to the school and say, hey, I have this additional piece of writing that I would like to add to my application. And most institutions are probably going to be willing to take that and add that into your application. Also, something I think that's important to remember in every application cycle, but definitely right now, your admissions counselor is also a person. So we're not here to be overly critical of like your experience in this time. We have also experienced this pandemic. So when you have an internship that was canceled, or you didn't get to take that community college class, or you didn't get to do some of the experiences in your spring semester at high school, some of your classes changes because they were online. We're gonna understand that because we probably missed out on some experiences too because of the pandemic. Your admissions counselor is there to advocate for you and help you in the process, not be actively working against you. So remember that that's sort of their role in this process, and be willing to use them as that point of advocacy. And again, if you have specific concerns about your particular situation, you're not sure how to share your story, you're not sure about different requirements, when you're not sure about these things, ask questions. Don't be afraid to reach out. We're not meant to be, hidden in our office and not there to have that personal contact. So we want you to reach out when you have those specific concerns, because we can help to sort of help you navigate that process. Like I briefly mentioned before, if something on the website just doesn't make sense, it doesn't add up, you're reading it and you're like, this doesn't make sense in the time of COVID. They're telling me I need to do an on-campus interview. If it doesn't make sense, follow up. websites have a lot of pages, and so the editing process, for example, Mass Maritime went test optional for this year, and it's a process to physically go through and find every place on the website where it mentions test scores. So it's entirely reasonable that in that process something just got overlooked. So if you're reading it and it doesn't match something else that you read on the website, it doesn't match an email you received from the institution, or vice versa, you receive an email that doesn't match information you saw on the website, follow up. It's very reasonable that there could have been a mistake in there, and it's better that you call attention to it than not. So don't be afraid to ask those follow-up questions and say, hey, this information doesn't line up. Lastly, I want to give everyone a reminder to take time to de-stress. If you spend your entire fall only thinking about applying to colleges, it's going to feel like a long time. So you don't have to spend 24/7 thinking about your college applications, especially if you're, maybe doing school remotely, even partially, maybe even some days of the week, and you're also attending these virtual events, and then you're also spending all the time working on those applications online. Be sure to carve out specific time that's for working on your applications, and carve out time that's meant to not be working on your applications. It's important to take that time to take a step back, de-stress, give yourself a minute. It's going to allow you to produce better quality work when you go work on your schoolwork, or you work on your application or your essay or anything like that. You'll feel more refreshed to be able to tackle those things if you've carved out some time where you're specifically not working on it or thinking about it. So just a reminder that that is an okay thing to do, and in fact something that you should do. And we can head over to the next slide, which I'm actually the first on this too. So we're just going to give a very brief overview of each one of our institutions. Like Zach mentioned at the beginning, some of the recordings are already available, or our institutional presentations are coming up, so you can definitely learn more. Briefly about Mass Maritime Academy, we are in Buzzards Bay, Massachusetts, which is right along the Cape Cod Canal, about an hour directly south of Boston. We are pretty small. We have about 1,700 undergraduate students and 7 academic majors, so we're very specialized. We're a public university of Massachusetts, as well as a state maritime academy. We're one of 6 state maritime academies in the country. And what that means is that we offer 2 majors in marine engineering and marine transportation, where students earn a bachelor's degree as well as a U.S. Coast Guard license to be able to work in shipping out on large vessels. Our other 5 programs are not U.S. Coast Guard licensing majors, but are still very STEM focused. Our students work in a variety of fields on land and at sea, so many work not on ships directly, but in the maritime industry and positions shoreside that support the industry. And we also have a lot of students working in other fields altogether. So I know maritime is in the name, but that's not the only thing you can do at Mass Maritime. We offer, we've really expanded from that. And so there's a number of different options in STEM. We're also a regimented school, which means that the structure and lifestyle on campus is similar to the military. However, you do not have a military requirement. So students are still free to go on and work as private citizens and do get some more downtime even as students as compared to the actual military. And we're Division III for athletics, which I just include because I know that's a common question that people are wondering about. The regiment does not remove sports, so you can have both of those experiences at once. And like I said, if you want to learn more, feel free to check out our recording or website.
Awesome. Yeah, and then Illinois Tech is up next. So again, just want to take a few minutes to talk a little bit more about us. As I've said many times, we are in Chicago. That's important to us. We encourage our students to take full advantage of the fact that they're in the city. That helps them with not only the academics and the internships and all that, but also just to have fun. Chicago's a great city. There's lots of great food, plenty of activities that you can get involved in. Even during a time like COVID, our students this fall will have an opportunity to explore the city in smaller groups and not in some of the same large functions that we previously might have loved as part of our experience living there, but it is still possible. Our institution is about 3,000 undergraduate students, so it is a smaller space, very hands-on, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation. So lots of engineering, architecture, computer science, those programs that you come to expect from cachet schools like us. We have a very very driven group of students. So lots of clubs and organizations. I mentioned that student health initiatives. It's pretty representative of our students. You can start a new group and pretty easily on campus. It only takes about 7 students. We are also a Division III athletic institution. So if you are interested in athletics, we aren't obviously participating this fall in athletics, but we do hope to bring that back up in the spring semester. And then some big application updates for this year. Not an update, application's always free at Illinois Tech. So that continues, which is great. But the biggest update is that we are test optional for this year because we do realize that not everyone has been able to test. So we want to make sure we're using that information. That's both for admissions and for scholarship at our institution. So that is a quick overview of Illinois Tech, but next we're going to head over to Lawrence.
So again, just a really quick overview of Lawrence Tech. We are a small private university in Southfield, Michigan, so right in the Metro Detroit area. We are small in that we have about 3,000 undergraduate students, about 1,000 grad students, so total of 4,000 on campus. Average class size is about 15 to 20 with an 11-to-1 student to faculty ratio. So like I mentioned earlier, we have a huge focus in one-on-one attention for all of our students, regardless of major, level, or anything like that. We have over 100 different academic programs in our 4 different colleges. So we have the College of Architecture and Design, College of Arts and Sciences, the College of Business and Information Technology, and last but not least, the College of Engineering, which is how we were founded as a College of Engineering in 1932. Our campus motto is something that we have lived by and taught by since 1932 at our founding, which is theory and practice. So not only getting our students the theoretical knowledge that they need in the classroom, but then taking that into a state-of-the-art lab or studio and giving them the hands-on education that we're so well known for. And we have a huge focus on undergraduate research. So coming in as a freshman, you will be in those labs and studios with your faculty, working on real-world application projects, a lot even industry-sponsored. A little bit about our campus life. We have 25 men and women's NAIA varsity athletic teams, so we are able to offer athletic scholarships. We have 4 on-campus housing units, so plenty of spaces for our students to live, and we have over 60 student clubs and organizations. So though we are small, there's a lot to do and a lot to get involved with. So it's just a little snapshot there. And I can pass it over to Randy if you wanted to give a little bit more information about BU.
Yeah, sure. I believe our session will be coming up pretty soon, if not tomorrow. So you'll be able to get a sense more detailed of who we are as a university, but just some bullet points to kick you off. Again, roughly 16,000 undergraduate students. We have students from all 50 states, over 130 countries worldwide. We have over 300 programs of study across 10 undergraduate schools and colleges. Our student to faculty ratio is 10 to 1 with an average class size of 27 students. At the heart of our institution, we are a teaching and research university, but focusing on, with a focus on liberal arts and that foundational education, as well as real world applications. So things like study abroad, internships, research, of course, are all woven and given to students and provided for students to take advantage of. We have NCAA Division I athletics. We are in the Patriot League, so we have roughly 24 varsity teams, as well as club and intramural level sports. Over 450 clubs or organizations aside from the sports that students can get involved with. Roughly 85% of students do live on campus with guaranteed housing for students all 4 years in the city of Boston. We're just closely, if not attached to the Kenmore Square area. Folks have ever been to Boston, we are pretty much around the corner from Fenway Park. Yeah, there's more to come in terms of who we are in our session coming up later, if not today, tomorrow. So thanks.
Awesome. And then I think we have a few minutes left for question and answer, which is great. For my other panelists, I can't actually see the question and answer box with the presentation up. So if somebody else wants to be the moderator for those, that would be great.
I can look into it. I have
Perfect.
it up here. Yep. So we had one question about our institutions, if we are having in-person visits or events for prospective students at this time.
Great. I'll kick off. So at our institution, we unfortunately are not able to welcome any students to campus right now. So all of our events are fully virtual for the fall semester. We definitely look forward to welcoming you back, hopefully in the spring. But for right now, everything's virtual.
At Mass Maritime, we are currently not offering any in-person visits and are not able to have visitors on campus. However, we are hoping to open up some limited in-person tours in October. It will a little bit depend on how the start of the semester goes, but that's what we are aiming for right now.
Yep. So again, mentioning, so we have all virtual programming for this fall. We do have a virtual tour that is on our website. Feel free to check that out. And then we'll hopefully relook at things for the spring semester and perhaps having folks on campus then.
And then at Lawrence Tech, we are currently offering on-campus tours. So we are very lucky in that we have been able to limit it to one family per tour. We're taking all necessary precautions in terms of social distancing and protocol. So we offer those tours Monday through Thursday, one at 10 a.m., one at noon, and one at 2 p.m. And all that information's on the website. And again, we will still have our virtual events as we go. Okay, we had a question, and Ashley, I know you spoke just a little bit about this, but in reaching out to admissions counselors, I know we talked a lot about contact. So when reaching out to an admissions officer, the student doesn't want to ask something that's answered on the website. So what sort of questions or any advice do you guys have in terms of reaching out?
Yeah, I saw that one. I know there's another one about questions and topics to talk to admissions counselor with. So I think there's a sort of a good double question there. I think it's okay to be upfront that you are not sure what you want to talk about. You can address something that's on the website. Like you could say, I saw this information on the website. I was interested in discussing it more, and kind of just leave it at that. And normally an admissions counselor will sort of prompt some additional information, which may bring up some extra questions for you. Don't be afraid to request a video chat. Sometimes that's easier if you're unsure what you want to talk about. Just say, I'd like to discuss the institution more. Can we set up a time for a phone call or a video chat? Because sometimes it's easier to have those open-ended conversations there. And it's also okay to just say, I'm interested in learning more, but I'm not sure what I want to learn more about. And usually admissions offices will have sort of a standard set of things that they may send you to sort of prompt that initial discussion. So when you, and those good topics can be really anything that you want to talk about. So if you're unsure where to start, just saying that is an okay approach as well.
Yeah, I would jump in on that same question. I would say also, as you're thinking about what you may want to talk about, just think about what's important to you. If you know you're somebody who loves video gaming and you're really passionate about that, if the school is a place that it encourages that and supports that, that might be a great fit for you. If it's not, obviously that might not be a place you want to explore. So I would say nothing is really too small. You're making a huge decision. So think about the nitty-gritty details of your day-to-day life. Think about what's important to you at home, because you know most situations you're going to be living there, you're studying there, you're working there. I mean, it's a huge decision. So I would say nothing is too small, honestly.
Second all that.
Yeah. And then another question I know just came through that kind of ties into this is if admissions departments keep track of what students are asking in terms of questions through email. I know me personally, I have email chains as long as 50 items with some students, so it's always nice to refer back. If you are a student, I would definitely keep those for your records just so you can kind of keep track of not only your questions, but also our answers. And I know personally some websites, there's a lot of information and it's a lot to get through. So even if you're concerned about maybe double asking a question that's already clear on the website, just ask us. We more than likely have the answers and it'll take the stress and the hard work out of it for you. That's why we're there to answer those questions. Let's see. Oh, we have one that says they're a student starting their junior year now. So what's the best time to start reaching out to admissions counselors? Should they wait till the end of junior year, or do you guys have any advice on that?
I can jump in here quickly. I think, especially if you're entering your junior year, I think, you know, right now we will be, a lot of us in admissions are going to be reaching out to our schools specifically, depending on if you're in different regions. So I think, and maybe initial contact could be, you know, attending the high school visit or attending some sort of virtual event that the school is having. And I think once you get a sense of the school itself, that way you'll have those questions ready to go, then I think you'll be better off to then reach out to your regional representative to then see some more clarification on things. I think sometimes students will just email the regional representative, just sort of not blindly, but just sort of, hey, I'm just interested about BU. Can you tell me more? and there's so much you could, you know, for each one of our institutions, there's so much you could say. So I think first initial contact may be to join a program, whether that's for your school or for the university itself. Once you get that under your belt, then, you know, start to individually reach out, because that way you'll have that topic at hand to work with.
And I think that also ties into another question that just came through. If there's a school you're really interested in, how do you make sure that school knows that? So I think that worked too. Okay, let's see. There's one that just came in. If an option, how, if anyone knows how virtual labs are going to operate, or more of those virtual classroom settings, what the logistics might look like for that for the upcoming academic year.
So I know for BU purposes, just really quickly, that I know that there's been discussions. I think we're still trying to figure that out because we have the hybrid model going on this fall. I know for our labs, there are conversations of perhaps sending, you know, laboratory equipment or sending some sort of packages to students who might have that class or might have that lab, so then they can somehow follow along at home in some capacity. I know that might get a little dicey depending on what the type of equipment is, but that is something that we are exploring, and we'll hopefully in the next couple of weeks know exactly what's going to happen.
Okay. We have more questions coming through, and I just want to make mention too, if your question doesn't get answered, like Zach said at the beginning, we will get a transcript of all of these questions with your contact information, so we'll be able to reach back out. There we go.
There's my cue. Thank you so much,
you.
team, for your time and your energy, and students and counselors. Thank you so much for joining us for this session. As Erin had mentioned, if you didn't have the opportunity to have your question answered, I will be providing them to all of the panelists. As Randy had mentioned, Boston University has a session that is upcoming, as does Illinois Tech. The recording for Lawrence Tech and Mass Maritime can be found at strivescan.com/virtual/STEM. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us, and have a great day.